done so for the benefit of this country. So New Zealand First will be supporting this bill.
I call Catherine Delahunty.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm delighted to have an opportunity to take a call on the EEZ Bill Part 2. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be at the Select Committee because this is a very interesting experience, even now hearing the aspirations for this bill, which unfortunately seem to me romantic. Basically, we know less about the deep ocean than we do about Mars and the surface of the moon. We don't know at 3,000 metres what's going to happen. And basically this bill, although laudable because we do need legislation that regulates it, the marine environment, is romantic. We have no ability to know whether we can sustainably manage something that we are yet to understand. And Part 2 actually provides the opportunity for marine consents as if it was something just down the road, as if it was a dairy farm or as if it was a block of conservation land where we're able to count species. But actually, we don't know hardly anything about what happens at 3,000 metres. We have some experience in the shallow water, and actually off the coast of Tauranga that didn't go terribly well. Having scraped a lot of oil off, I know that even in the shallow water with a tiny spill, it's very difficult to restore the environment. And it may appear to be nothing to do with it, but actually when we're talking about risk management and sustainability, you cannot invoke caution if you are going to ignore precaution. And that's what the debate is actually about. So whether you're talking about the Rena minor disaster or the what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, best practice, I don't think so. We do not know what to do about this in terms of adaptive management. Adaptive management regimes where you can adapt what you're doing because you have some control over the environment are valid. But in 3,000 metres off the coast, say for example of Whānau-Apanui, in the deep ocean where we don't even know the species that we are potentially destroying, it is gambling. And let's just admit it, it is gambling. I'd like to move to some other points about Part 2 and support the comments of Reno Tirakatane about the issues around the treaty, because I remember vividly the foreshore and seabed takutai moana. It was never about the beach. It was about getting Crown control and the right to permit seabed, read my lips, and foreshore resources. That's what it was about. And that's why Elvis Teddy got in that boat with Whānau-Apanui and went off the coast and got arrested for whatever the court could dream up, but in fact the case failed. The case failed even though the Navy tried to arrest him because Part 2 is about granting consents, Mr Chair, and I'm talking about the rights of people to say no. The rights of people to say, I do not want this to happen in my rohe. And that's why the history is important about Part 2. Because this is setting up tests around possibly being cautious when in fact we already know that some communities have said no, but what is going to be the ability to test the information? I just want to look at page 53 of Part 2 where they talk about favouring caution. And the reason why they have not used precautionary principle, Mr Chair, is that it has meaning, and that favouring caution is a wonderful new phrase for it's like a traffic light. Perhaps we better not go for green, we'll just go for orange, and then when we like it, we'll go for green. That's what favouring caution means. But the precautionary principle was discussed at Rio in relation to deep-sea mining, and this is what was said by Dr Helen Rosenbaum, who said that the precautionary principle is about uncertainty about the nature of impacts, but there is a reason to believe there is going to be serious negative impact, then the project should be delayed. So the reason this is not in the Act is that precautionary is an extremely strong test, which actually sometimes argue that if you do not understand what you're doing, you don't do it. Sorry, not you, Mr Chair. If people do not understand what they're doing, they don't do it. Whereas being cautious is open to any form of interpretation. I'd just like to quote 60A 3.4, which says, in this section, best available information means the best information that in the particular circumstances is available without unreasonable cost, effort or time. Now, does that sound like the precautionary principle? No, because it's not. It doesn't even sound like caution to me. It sounds like We don't want to limit the opportunities here, and if we don't know what's under the ocean and we're not sure what impact the deep sea drilling is going to have, or the seismic blasting or anything else, is it going to be unreasonable cost to find out? Is it going to be a bit of effort, or is it going to take too much time? Or in which case, we don't want to limit ourselves, Mr. Chair.
Catherine Delahunty.
So I won't take a full 5 minutes, Mr. Chair, but I just wanted to briefly say that if you're talking about robust legislation in what is basically an extremely unknown environment, Part 2 does not meet the tests. It is very important that principles like proportionate approach and adaptive management are actually workable. And it's not workable to talk about this environment that we don't even understand and try and apply these tests, which actually in the RMA need to be stronger, and in the RMA many of us have struggled in our ability to participate meaningfully. Because if we're talking about the development of resources in this country, we're not talking about the people of the East Coast getting a job. We're talking about Petrobras and Nautilus and the other multinationals who will be fronting up this week at the Pacific Island Forum as well. And basically what they're saying is open slather, we want to get in there. Now this bill has got the opportunity to provide some prevention. But I'd like to also acknowledge what Rino Tirakatini said about the role of Māori and the treaty in it. Because if the advisory committee, which is mentioned in here in the EPA, is optional, then how does Whānau Apanui say, we don't want this? How do they say no if the advice around tangata whenua is either optional or mere advice? Well, I don't know, but I have spent, far too many years of my life in the Environment Court where advice from tangata whenua has been ignored, and where optional information has been ignored, and where the idea that someone's going to benefit and someone's going to make money means that we can enter into environments that we have no baseline data about, that we don't understand, and that we just hope. And the difference between the land and the sea is that the sea looks as if it covers everything up. And that's why we dump all our waste in it, dump all our sewage in it, and dump all our pollutants in the sea, because we can't see it and we've got no imagination. But we lose species when we do that. We lose threatened species, we lose integrity of our fisheries, we leave opportunities for the future. And so I'm very disappointed, Mr. Chair, that the bill is so loose. I understand that it's improved, and I'm grateful that it's improved, but I can't accept that sustainable management is possible or adaptive management is possible in Part 2 if you don't even know what the environment is that you're planning to manage. Basically, we're running out of oil on the planet, so now we're going into the deep ocean. No one would be doing it if they could get it from somewhere else because it's too hard. This is going to be even harder. We're going to do damage. And what's scary is we can go through all the loops and processes, but without any baselines, we are not going to achieve sustainability or environmental protection. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to take a call on